Tunde stared at the email on his screen, his hands trembling. Application approved. The words stared back at him, confirming what had once been a distant dream. He had spent countless nights envisioning a better future for his family, yet now, faced with the reality of uprooting his life, an unsettling wave of doubt washed over him. Was he truly ready to leave everything behind? Three African friends, Tunde, Emeka, and Mensah, had built stable lives in their home countries, with thriving careers, beautiful homes, and promising futures. The thought of relocating abroad remained just that, a thought, until it became a real possibility. Tunde, a financial analyst, was particularly drawn to Canada's permanent resident program, hoping to secure better educational opportunities for his children. He envisioned a future where they could access world-class education without the limitations he had faced. Emeka, a pharmacist, was content in Africa but was willing to explore new horizons. He was open-minded about the move, seeing it as an opportunity but not a necessity. Mensah, on the other hand, an IT specialist, craved adventure and a fresh start. For him, the idea of working in a global tech hub was an exciting challenge that he couldn't resist. As conversations grew more serious, each of them had extensive discussions with their spouses. There were long nights filled with debates, weighing the pros and cons, and trying to envision what life in Canada would look like. Would they be able to secure good jobs? Would they fit into the new culture? Would their children adjust? These were questions that constantly occupied their minds. Tunde's wife, Fumi, was particularly enthusiastic. She saw relocation as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to broaden their family's prospects and give their children the best possible start in life. She meticulously researched schools, neighborhoods, and job prospects, ensuring they were fully prepared for the transition. Emeka's wife, Nkechi, was more cautious. She loved their life in Africa and feared the uncertainties that came with relocating. However, she trusted her husband's judgment and was willing to support his decision. Mensah's wife, Aisha, was the most eager. She had always been ambitious and career-driven, and she believed that relocating would open up new professional doors for both of them. The application process was long and tedious. Filling out paperwork, gathering documentation, and waiting for approvals took months. There were moments of doubt and frustrations, but they pushed through, motivated by the dream of a better future. When the final approvals came through, the excitement knew no bounds. They celebrated with friends and family. But there was also an underlying sadness in their hearts. They were leaving behind the familiarity of home, their loved ones, and everything they had ever known. As they packed their bags, the reality of their decision truly sank in. Their homes, once filled with comfort and certainty, now felt like temporary spaces. The goodbyes were emotional. Parents, siblings, and friends tearfully wished them well. They were filled with hope, but also an unspoken fear of the unknown. Were they making the right choice? Would they find what they were looking for? These thoughts lingered as they boarded their flights, ready to start a new chapter in their lives. With visas approved and bags packed, the three families embarked on their journey. The thrill of the unknown fueled their excitement, but they had yet to grasp the true weight of their decision. As the plane took off, they stared out the window, watching their homeland fade into the distance, knowing that their lives were about to change forever. Stepping into Canada felt unreal. The icy wind that greeted them was a complete opposite to the warmth they had left behind. The moment they stepped off the plane, they were hit with the reality they had not entirely prepared for. Adjusting to the weather was their first shock. The biting cold was unlike anything they had ever experienced. Their heavy jackets did little to protect them from the frigid temperatures, and a simple task such as walking around became a challenge. The first few weeks were filled with lots of paperwork. They had to navigate a number of government offices to obtain essential documents like health cards and social insurance numbers. The process was time-consuming, frustrating, and often left them feeling overwhelmed. Despite the efficiency of the Canadian system, the friends found themselves longing for the familiarity of their home countries, where navigating public offices was at least predictable. Finding a home turned out to be another major challenge. They had initially booked short-term rentals, assuming they would find permanent accommodation quickly. However, they soon realized that renting a decent apartment in a good neighborhood required extensive credit history, which they did not yet have. Many landlords were reluctant to rent out to newcomers without Canadian job records, forcing them to rely on expensive temporary accommodations far longer than they had planned. This constant uncertainty added to their stress, making the transition even more difficult. The financial strain of starting over weighed heavily on all the three families. Tunde, the most fortunate of the group, managed to land a lucrative job within 2 months. His financial background and professional networking skills helped him secure employment. But even he was not immune to the emotional turmoil that came with adapting to a new culture and work environment. The corporate structure in Canada was different from what he was used to, and he often felt like an outsider struggling to fit in. Emeka's experience was drastically different. He had assumed that his years of experience as a pharmacist with certifications would make it easy to find related jobs. But he was quickly disappointed. Every application required Canadian work experience and a couple more certifications, which he did not have. His confidence took a hit as he applied for jobs after job with no success. With bills piling up and no immediate prospects, he was forced to take a job as a supermarket sales attendant. The transition from a respected medical professional to a retail worker was a tough pill to swallow. At home, Nkechi's new high-paying job made things even more complicated. She was excelling in her career, but Emeka struggled with his changing role as a provider, leading to frequent arguments and resentment. Mensah faced the harshest reality of them all. Despite having an in-demand IT background, he struggled to break into the competitive Canadian job market. He had anticipated getting a job quickly, but the countless rejection emails told a different story. Each rejection eroded his confidence, and he found himself withdrawing from his family and friends. His wife, Aisha, tried to remain positive, picking up low-paying work to help make ends meet. But the emotional toll on their marriage was undeniable. The once adventurous and confident Mensah was now filled with doubt and frustration, making every conversation at home tense. The friends leaned on each other for support, frequently gathering to vent about their struggles. While they found comfort in their shared experiences, it was clear that the excitement of relocating had been replaced by the brutal reality of starting over in a foreign land. The road ahead was uncertain, and they all began to wonder if they had made the right decision. They had heard of the challenges of relocation, but living through them was entirely different. The culture shock, the job market struggles, financial pressures, and the loneliness, they were all consuming. Yet, despite the difficulties, they reminded themselves of the reasons they had taken this step. The promise of a better future still lingered in their minds, and they hoped that with time things would improve. 6 months in, the honeymoon phase of relocation had faded. The realities of living in a foreign land began to weigh heavily on the families. The emotional and psychological toll on their struggles became evident in their marriages, friendships, and overall well being. For Emeka, the tension at home had escalated. Nkechi's demanding job had taken over much of her time, leaving Emeka feeling neglected. He resented the shift in roles. Once the primary breadwinner, he now struggled to contribute significantly. The burden of household chores and childcare sometimes he had never envisioned for himself only deepened his frustration. Their conversations turned into heated arguments, often ending with silence or slammed doors. Nkechi, on the other hand, felt exhausted. She was carrying the financial load, excelling at work, yet coming home to a resentful husband who refused to acknowledge the difficulty of her own transition. Mensah, still without stable employment, found himself slipping into depression. The once confident and lively man had become withdrawn, avoiding social gatherings and even interactions with his own family. Aisha tried to encourage him, but her patience was running thin. She had always admired Mensah's resilience, yet now she found herself carrying the emotional weight of their household. They had come to Canada with so much hope, yet every passing day chipped away at their confidence. The financial strain grew worse as their savings depleted faster than anticipated. The thought of returning home in shame loomed over them, but neither wanted to admit defeat. Tunde, despite having a stable job, was not immune to the struggles. His long working hours left him disconnected from his family. Fumi, though grateful for their financial stability, began to feel lonely. Their once lively home now felt like a house of routine. Wake up, work, sleep, repeat. Their children adapted quicker than they did, picking up Canadian culture and mannerisms with ease, which only made Tunde and Fumi feel further disconnected. The sense of community they once enjoyed in Africa was missing, leaving a void that neither of them knew how to fill. The three friends often gathered to share their frustrations. Their meetups, once filled with excitement about their new lives, had turned into complaint sessions. They found solace in each other's struggles, yet it was not enough to erase the personal battles they faced at home. The cold, both literal and figurative, was beginning to seep into their bones, testing the very foundation of their marriages and friendships. The pressures of relocation had forced them to confront issues they never anticipated: role reversals, financial uncertainty, emotional disconnect, and cultural adaptation. They had expected challenges, but living through them was an entirely different experience. As the months rolled on, they realized that survival in Canada required more than just ambition. It required a complete mindset shift, one that none of them had been fully prepared for. The cracks in their relationships deepened, and with every argument, moments of self doubt, and missed opportunity, they began to wonder, was this new life worth all the sacrifices they had made? As tensions mounted, their marriages reached critical points. The strain of financial pressures, career setbacks, and cultural adjustments created a rift that no amount of optimism could mend. Each couple struggled with their own battles, but the common denominator was difficulty of adaptation. Emeka's frustration boiled over. He felt emasculated by Nkechi's financial success as his own inability to secure a position in his field. He resented the long hours she spent at work and her increasing independence. Nkechi, on the other hand, was exhausted. She had taken on the role of the breadwinner unexpectedly, and despite her success, felt emotionally drained by Emeka's unwillingness to adjust. Their fights became more frequent, with neither willing to compromise. Mensah, still jobless, felt his self-worth deteriorate with each passing day. The once confident and adventurous man now found himself questioning everything. Aisha, despite her unwavering determination to make things work, grew weary of the constant arguments. She missed the versions of Mensah, who was ambitious, loving, caring, and bubbly. The man she now lived with was bitter, irritable, and withdrawn. Their love was being replaced by resentment. Tunde, although professionally settled, faced his own demons. The demands of his job, coupled with the loneliness of a new country, weighed in on him. Fumi tried to create a warm home, but she too missed the vibrancy of their life back home. Their conversations were often revolved around whether they had made the right choice. Desperate for a solution, the three couples sought help. Their first attempt at counseling with their local religious communities yielded little success. Advice was either too culturally rigid or failed to address the practical struggles of life in a foreign country. They needed someone who understood both their backgrounds and their new reality. Eventually, they were referred to an African descendant marriage counselor. In their sessions, they were forced to confront uncomfortable truths. The counselor encouraged them to communicate more openly, share responsibilities, and redefine their roles within their marriages. He reminded them that relocation was not just a physical transition, but an emotional one that required mutual support. Through counseling, Emeka slowly realized that clinging to the outdated gender roles was harming his marriage. He made small but significant efforts, helping with household chores, supporting Nkechi in her career, and acknowledging his own feelings without resentment. Nkechi, in turn, softened. She appreciated Emeka's willingness to change and reciprocated by ensuring he still felt valued in their partnership. Mensah remained resistant. He still entertained the thought of returning to Africa, feeling that Canada had stripped him of his identity. Aisha, in contrast, stood her ground. She had sacrificed too much to turn back now. Their sessions often ended in heated debates, but one night, after a particularly emotional argument, Aisha finally voiced the sacrifices she had made in Africa for his dreams. For the first time, Mensah listened without defensiveness, and after the long talks, they embraced, acknowledging the need for a new strategy. Mensah would return to Africa temporarily while Aisha and the children stayed in Canada, bridging their lives between two worlds. Tunde and Fumi, though in a better place than their friends, found clarity through counseling as well. They learned to appreciate their new life while keeping the spirit of their homeland alive through traditions and community gatherings. Slowly but surely, each couple began to rebuild. The journey was far from easy, but they now understood that success in a new country was not just about individual ambition. It was about unity, sacrifice, and adaptation. After months of turmoil, each of the three families began to realize that adaptation was necessary for survival. Tunde, who had initially struggled with the loneliness of his new life, took proactive steps to integrate into Canadian society. He joined professional groups and networking events to establish himself more firmly in his career. Additionally, he and Fumi started attending cultural gatherings organized by the African community, which helped them feel more connected to their roots while embracing their new environment. Fumi, who had felt isolated at home, found solace in meeting other immigrant families who shared similar struggles. Emeka, after much hesitation, took the bold step to enroll in a certification program to obtain the necessary credentials for practicing pharmacy in Canada. The program was demanding, but he saw it as an investment in his future. Nkechi, realizing the strain her job had placed on their marriage, made conscious efforts to balance work and home life. She initiated open conversations with Emeka, and they worked together to redefine their roles within the household. Emeka started helping out more at home, and in turn, Nkechi began to prioritize family time. They learned that teamwork was essential for thriving in their new reality. Mensah's journey of adaptation was the most difficult. His struggles with unemployment and dwindling self-esteem had taken a toll on his marriage. Aisha, though patient, had grown weary of his constant negativity. And one day, after an heated argument, they both decided that Mensah would move back to Africa to explore remote work options in Canada. Beyond professional and marital struggles, the friends also had to navigate their changing roles as parents. Their children had adapted quickly to Canadian culture, sometimes challenging tradition values their parents held dear. Discussions about independence, discipline, and career choices became common in their households. Initially resistant, the parents soon realized they needed to find a balance between preserving their cultural identity and allowing their children to integrate fully into their new society. Through shared experiences and mutual support, Tunde, Emeka, and Mensah started seeing positive changes. They acknowledged that relocation was not just about physical movement, it was a mental and emotional transition that required resilience, flexibility, and a willingness to embrace change. Slowly but surely, they found a rhythm that worked for their families. After several months, each of the three families began to realize that adaptation was necessary for survival. The initial shock of relocation had subsided, but now came the difficult task of adjusting to their new reality. Each couple had to redefine their roles, expectations, and mindset to find a way forward. Adjusting to life in Canada required a complete mental shift. The friends quickly realized that success in this new country was not just about career progression, but also about embracing an entirely different way of life. From workplace culture to family dynamics and social expectations, everything required a conscious effort to unlearn and relearn. The struggle was no longer just about making ends meet. It was about finding a sense of belonging. Tunde actively networked, joining professional associations to expand his reach. He attended workshops, participated in mentorship programs, and leveraged LinkedIn to build connections. The more he engaged with professionals, the more he understood the nuance of the Canadian work culture. He learned that in Canada, soft skills were just as important as technical skills. Small talk, teamwork, and collaboration were valued, and making connections through referrals was often the key to career advancement. While he initially missed the straightforward corporate culture he was used to back home, he began to appreciate the opportunities that came with this new system. Emeka struggled at first, but with the encouragement of his wife and the marriage counselor's advice, he gradually became more open to change. He began helping around the house, a task that had once seemed foreign to him. Though it was difficult, he realized that sharing responsibilities actually improved his relationship with Nkechi. His willingness to contribute at home not only reduced tension but also made their household run more smoothly. Over time, he came to understand that gender roles in Canada were fluid, and success as a couple meant working together as a team. Nkechi, on the other hand, also made significant efforts to adjust. She started approaching her husband with more patience and respect, recognizing that he was going through a difficult phase. Instead of expressing her frustrations harshly, she practiced better communication, ensuring that Emeka felt heard and valued. The change in their interactions helped them rediscover their love and companionship, allowing them to navigate their struggles together rather than against each other. Mensah, despite splitting his time between Africa and Canada, found that his mindset was shifting. Initially resistant to the changes required for success in Canada, he soon realized that no matter where he lived, adaptation was inevitable. He started exploring remote IT job opportunities, which allowed him to stay connected to his profession while still maintaining his African ties. While the arrangement was not ideal, it provided him with financial stability and a sense of purpose. With time, he began to appreciate aspects of Canadian life that he had initially resented: the efficiency, the structured systems, and the opportunities for growth. He learned to stop comparing Canada to Africa and instead focus on integrating elements of both worlds into his life. His relationship with Aisha also improved as they found a way to balance their personal ambitions while staying emotionally connected. Beyond their individual journeys, the friends realized that adapting to life in Canada was also about building a strong support system. They began to participate more in community events, forming bonds with other African immigrants who had gone through similar struggles. The shared experiences provided a much needed sense of home away from home. Through social gatherings, religious groups, and cultural associations, they forged friendships that helped them navigate the complexities of their new lives. Through shared experiences and mutual support, Tunde, Emeka, and Mensah started seeing positive changes. One evening, as they gathered with their wives for a quiet dinner, they reflected on their journey. They had arrived Canada full of hope, faced unforeseen challenges, and had questioned their choices numerous times. But now, they were beginning to find their footing. They had learned that success was not instant, but a process that required time, patience, and unwavering determination. Though the road had been tough, they had come to appreciate the lessons relocation had taught them. They were not just surviving, they were learning, evolving, and growing. And with that realization, they finally felt ready to embrace their new home, not just as immigrants, but as people who had conquered the odds. Over time, they came to understand that relocation was not just about financial security or career advancement. It was about growth, resilience, and transformation. Their initial struggles had tested them, but they had emerged stronger, wiser, and more equipped to handle whatever came next. While they would always cherish their roots, they had finally embraced Canada as their new home, not just as immigrants, but as individuals who had adapted, evolved, and flourished. The children of the three families adapted quickly. Unlike their parents, they were exposed to the new culture daily at school, where they interacted with peers from diverse backgrounds. They learned the language, customs, and social norms much faster than their parents had anticipated, making it easier for them to integrate. However, this rapid adaptation also created a cultural divide between the parents and their children. While the parents clung to their African roots, hoping to preserve their traditions, their children began embracing new ideals that sometimes clashed with their upbringing. The parents noticed their children questioning long held family values, something that was uncommon back home. Discipline became a contentious issue in the household. In Africa, discipline was often strict and respect for elders was non-negotiable. However, in Canada, the children were exposed to a different way of thinking, one that encouraged self-expression and independence. They began challenging their parents on issues such as curfews, career choices, and gender roles. Arguments that would have been unheard of back home became common. Parents struggled to assert their authority while remaining mindful of the Canadian child protection laws, which frowned upon corporal punishment. Tunde and Fumi's eldest son, David, once an obedient child, started questioning why certain family traditions mattered. He resisted the expectation that he must always take on responsibilities as the eldest male, something that was deeply ingrained in their culture. Meanwhile, Emeka and Nkechi's daughter, Ada, openly disagreed with the notion that women should take on primary domestic duties. Influenced by her peers and teachers, she sought more independence, which often led to heated debates at home. Mensah and Aisha's children were perhaps the most influenced by their new environment. Since their father was still traveling frequently between Africa and Canada, Aisha had to manage both parenting and work responsibilities alone. This made it harder for her to reinforce certain cultural expectations. Their teenage son, Kwame, began expressing frustrations at what he considered outdated rules, arguing that his friends enjoyed more freedom and had more say in decisions that affected them. As the children grew, the tension between maintaining their African identity and assimilating into Canadian culture became even more apparent. Some children resisted speaking their native languages, preferring English or French, while others avoided participating in traditional customs. Despite these challenges, the parents recognized the importance of balancing tradition with integration. They sought ways to pass down their values while giving their children space to navigate their new reality. Many began attending cultural events, enrolling their children in community programs that celebrated African heritage, and encouraging them to stay connected to their roots. At the same time, they made a conscious effort to be more understanding of their children's perspectives. They learned to engage in an open discussion rather than imposing rigid rules. Instead of simply enforcing expectations, they explained the significance behind their cultural beliefs, helping their children appreciate their identity rather than feeling burdened by it. Over time, some compromises were reached. The children learned to respect their traditions while still having the freedom to explore new aspects of their identity. The parents, in turn, learned that adaptation was not just their burden, it was a family effort. Through mutual understanding, they found a way to ensure their children remain connected to their African heritage while also thriving in their new environment. The process was not easy, but it was necessary as they realized that success in their new country was not just about their careers. It was also about raising children who could bridge both worlds with pride. Each friend sought different ways to feel at home in Canada. It was no longer just about settling down, it was about establishing roots, finding comfort, and building meaningful relationships in an unfamiliar environment. The journey to belonging was different for each of them, shaped by their individual personalities and struggles. Tunde found a sense of belonging in his professional network. He developed friendships with colleagues, immersing himself in the corporate culture, which helped him feel more settled. He understood that success in Canada required more than just technical skills. It required connections. He attended industry conferences, joined mentorship programs, and actively participated in discussions that shaped his sector. Over time, He gained recognition and began mentoring new immigrants in his field, offering guidance on how to navigate the Canadian job market. This gave him a sense of fulfillment, knowing that he was helping others avoid the challenges he once faced. Emeka, who had initially struggled with his identity in Canada, leaned into his faith. He became more involved in the local African church, participating in community events and volunteering. The church was not just a place of worship, it was a sanctuary where he found people who understood his struggles. The gatherings, prayer meetings, and social activities reminded him of home, creating a bridge between his past and his present. Through the church, he found support, friendship, and a renewed sense of purpose. Nkechi also found comfort among the women's fellowship where she bonded with other immigrant wives who were facing similar challenges. Mensah, despite his time away, stayed connected through virtual networking. He engaged with online African Canadian communities, which provided him with a bridge between both worlds. He started participating in virtual business discussions and forums that connected Africans in the diaspora. Through these interactions, he found remote job opportunities, allowing him to continue working in his field while maintaining his African connections. Over time, he realized that he could still thrive professionally without sacrificing his cultural identity. Beyond their individual journeys, they all came to understand that building a life in Canada required more than just financial security. Their children also played a role in shaping their sense of belonging. As the children made friends and became more integrated into the society, the parents were encouraged to do the same. School events, extracurricular activities, and parent-teacher meetings provided new opportunities to interact with other families. Slowly, they found themselves forming friendships with people from different backgrounds, broadening their perspectives and easing the sense of isolation. The journey to belonging was not a straight path. It was filled with moments of doubt and self-discovery. But as they reflected on their experiences, they realized that they had come a long way. The struggles had made them stronger. The challenges had taught them resilience, and the victories, big and small, had given them the confidence to call Canada home. Through patience, persistence, and support of one another, they no longer felt like outsiders looking in. They had built a life, a community, and a future. And in doing so, they had truly found a place where they belonged. Years later, the friends gathered for a reunion. Over food and laughter, they reflected on their journey. The atmosphere was warm as they recounted the highs and lows of their relocation experience. It was a moment of gratitude, realizing how far they have come despite the many obstacles they had faced along the way. Each of them had taken different paths, yet they had all evolved. Tunde spoke about the importance of community and emphasizing how crucial it was to have a strong support system when navigating a new country. He recalled the initial loneliness, the cultural shock, and the uncertainty that had once consumed them. But looking around at the faces of his friends and their families, he knew they had all found a way to adapt and thrive. Adapting and adjusting to life abroad after relocation requires a mental shift and preparedness. Relocating to a new country is more than just a physical move. It is an emotional, psychological, and cultural transition that demands total preparedness. Many people see relocation as a fresh start, and an opportunity for better living. However, the reality of adapting to a new environment comes with its own set of challenges requiring an open mind. Emeka, nodding in agreement, adding that he now understood that relocation was a deeply personal journey. Some thrived, some struggled, and some redefined their version of success. What mattered most was the ability to adapt, persevere, and find meaning in the journey itself while holding on tight to one's family. A family's tie is like a tree branch. It can bend but never break, Emeka said, reflecting on the many times he and Nkechi had almost given up. They had faced difficult moments, but in the end, their unity had helped them push through. He encouraged his friends to always look forward to new possibilities and never give up, no matter how tough the road might seem. Mensah, with a playful chuckle, added, "No matter how far a river flows, it never forgets its source." He had learned to balance his life between Africa and Canada, understanding that identity was fluid. He no longer viewed his relocation as leaving home, but rather as expanding his horizons. Wherever life plants you, bloom with grace, he continued. The road to success is never a straight line, but the curves and the bends shapes us into who we are meant to be. As the evening stretched on, they toasted to their struggles and triumphs. They knew that the road ahead would still come with its own challenges, but they had gained wisdom and strength through experience. They had built new lives while holding on to the values that made them who they were. They had faced the unknown and conquered it, not by erasing their past, but by embracing both worlds. The journey of relocation had tested their limits, yet it had given them new perspectives, deeper friendships, and a broader understanding of what it meant to truly belong. They had learned that home was not just a place, it was a feeling, one that they had managed to recreate in their new environment. And so, as they laughed and reminisced, they knew one thing for sure: no matter where life took them, they would always carry a piece of home with them, in their hearts and in the bonds they had formed along the way. A new dawn. Tunde adjusted his suit jacket as he stood before a cheering crowd, his campaign slogan on the banners behind him. Just a few years ago, he had stared at his computer screen, hands trembling at the sight of the words "application approved." Now, he was running for a local political office, aiming to be a voice for immigrants who had walked the same path he once did. Seated in the front row were his longtime friends, Emeka and Mensah, their families by their sides. They had all come a long way from the days of uncertainty, late night doubts, and endless job applications. Now, they were thriving. Emeka smiled as he watched Tunde deliver his speech. He leaned over to whisper to his wife, "Nkechi, remember when we debated if coming here was the right decision?" She chuckled and gave his hand a squeeze. Emeka had conquered his biggest hurdle, passing the rigorous Canadian pharmacy certification exams. After months of studying, sleepless nights, and working odd jobs, he had finally received his pharmacist license. He now owned his own pharmacy, a thriving business in the heart of the city. Customers trusted him, and his name had become synonymous with excellence in the local healthcare community. Nkechi, no longer burdened by the sole responsibility of providing for the family, had pursued her own dreams, landing an executive role in a multinational firm. Their children, once hesitant about their new environment, had flourished. Their eldest daughter, Ada, had been accepted into a prestigious university to study medicine, while their younger son, Kene, was excelling in sports. Mensah, who had once battled self-doubt and financial instability, now beamed with pride. A major IT multinational had recognized his skills, offering him a six-figure salary and a leadership role in their cybersecurity department. The very same Canadian work culture that had initially frustrated him was now where he thrived. His wife, Aisha, had built a name for herself in the non-profit sector, working on programs that empowered immigrant families. Their home was a stunning 5-bedroom house with an office where Mensah worked remotely for clients across the globe. His children no longer saw themselves as outsiders but as confident, well-assimilated young individuals blending the best of their African heritage with their Canadian upbringing. As Tunde wrapped up his speech, he looked at the faces in the crowd and then back at his friends. Who would have thought that the man who once hesitated before leaving his home country would now be standing before thousands, advocating for policies that would benefit immigrants like himself? Tunde had taken a bold step into politics, running for a seat in the local government. After years of climbing the corporate ladder in finance, he realized that true change required political action. His wife, Fumi, had built a successful real estate company, helping newcomers find their dream homes, just as they once struggled to do. That night, the three families gathered in Tunde's backyard. Their children played by the pool. Laughter filled the air. Over a table of grilled meats and African delicacies, the friends raised their glasses. To success, Mensah said, clinking his glass with the others. To perseverance, Emeka added. Tunde smiled, looking at the friends who had become his family. To new beginnings, he said. As they drank, they knew that this was not just a toast, it was a declaration, a promise to keep thriving, keep building, and never forget the journey that brought them here. Tunde looked around at his friends and their families, then said, "We are proof that struggle is not the end of the road. It is the beginning of something greater." Emeka nodded and added, "Success is not about how fast you arrive, but about the lessons you learn along the way." Mensah smiled and raised his glass again. "Dreams don't work unless you do, and nothing worthwhile comes easy. But when you persevere, the reward is sweeter than you ever imagined." Their children listened, absorbing the wisdom in their father's words. They knew they were standing on the shoulders of men who had fought, adapted, and flourished. The fire pit crackled softly in the background as Fumi, Nkechi, and Aisha exchanged glances, knowing that their sacrifice had also paved the way for this moment. Here's to resilience, to family, to new beginnings, Tunde said. And with that, they all clicked their glasses once more, sealing their journey with a final toast to a future filled with endless possibilities. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, kindly like, subscribe, and share with others.